Today on the Next, our guest is Shaun Meredith, CTO and co-founder of Omnic AI. Omnic AI is a global leader in eSports player performance data and analytics. They use artificial intelligence and machine learning to help players improve through their flagship platform called Omnic Forge. I was excited for this one because, as anyone who's been following my newsletter knows, I've been thinking about potentially doing similar, but in youth sports, helping kids who are playing competitive sports to train at home using AI. So it was very interesting to talk to someone who is utilizing a lot of the same computer vision, machine learning, etc., but doing it to help gamers better their gameplay. We cover a lot in this episode, including how Omnic AI came to be, where they got started, what types of tooling and infrastructure they use, which was also interesting because they started before the big LLMs were around. So it was fascinating to hear how they did it then and how they would have done it now if they were starting from scratch. We talk about what types of gamers they serve and how they distinguish between the needs of the high-end professional players and everybody else. We talk about their go-to-market, their business model, the traction they've been getting so far, some of the challenges with scaling a business like this, and of course, we talk about the future, not just of Omnic AI, but of AI and building technology companies with AI in general. It's a great one, and I hope you enjoy. But before we get started, I'm Jason Jacobs, and this is the Next. It's not really a show, it's more of a learning journey to explore how founders can build ambitious companies while being present for family and not compromising flexibility and control, and also how emerging AI tools can assist with that. Each week, we bring on guests who are at the tip of the spear on redefining how ambitious companies get built, and selfishly, the goal is for this to help me better understand how to do that myself while bringing all of you along for the ride. Not sure where this is going to go, but it's going to be fun. Okay, Shaun Meredith, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. This is great. Thanks, Jason.
I'm excited to have you. So we got connected through Seth Sivak, I believe, and Seth and I have entrepreneurship in common, but one thing we do not have in common is I don't know much at all about the gaming world, but I do know about being a founder and about building consumer companies, and I'm exploring doing stuff in youth sports around analytics and coaching and using AI. And Seth said, "Well, hey, my friend Shaun is doing, but for esports, and so it feels like I have a lot to learn from you, and I'm really grateful that you made the time to come on and speak with me today."
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, and likewise, you've got a deep, rich background in, the various entrepreneurial activities and the VC world. So I'm sure there's a lot we can learn from each other. So glad to do this. You bet.
Great. Well, for starters, Shaun, maybe just talk a bit about Omnic AI and what it is, how it came about. Just, I guess, anything you want to share about it.
You bet. So, basically put, Omnic AI is what we're doing is we're analyzing video of your gameplay using computer vision and deep learning techniques and recognizing different elements or different parts of your gameplay to help you play better. So kind of think of it as like an AI coach assistant kind of thing. And we do that in a simple, easy to read post-match analysis that you get after every match. We currently cover 5 titles: Valorant, Fortnite, Overwatch 2, Rocket League, and Madden NFL. And we plan on expanding to many more titles within the next year. In terms of kind of how we got started or into this
Yeah,
is,
because you've been doing it a while, right?
yeah, we have since 2021. Basically, I've been an entrepreneur several times. This is my 5th startup. Worked for Apple as well, so always interested in that technology, angle, and had been watching the gaming industry for for a while, saying, like, what is something that's kind of unique that we could do kind of in the gaming
Are
space?
you a gamer, Sean?
That's a double-edged sword, right? People always ask, "Are you a gamer?" I'm not a hardcore gamer. I'm definitely like a casual gamer. Would love to game more, but I'm always busy building things. So I wind up building things, software much more than I do actually getting to game myself. However, that being said, I really enjoy puzzle strategy games and, uh, basically, hanging out with my friends online, just like anybody else.
Great.
Um,
Well, keep going with the story. Yeah, I asked just because it's always interesting to understand
okay.
what when founders are building. It's like some people say build for yourself, and other people say, well, actually, it doesn't matter. And in some ways, it can be a hindrance to build for yourself because if you build for yourself, you're not listening to your customers. So I was just curious.
Yes. No, that's a really good point, and I do think like there's part of it that is kind of building for myself, right, in a way, because I'm always interested in using data to improve, right? You know, something kind of burned into you as a technologist is okay, let's take data now, let's see, is that a good measure or not? How do we improve? How do we yeah, add process? Anyway, so what was really interesting is watching kind of some of the esports titles on the rise and seeing how suddenly, some of these tournaments began getting bigger and bigger. The leagues formed, and then you started having franchises in leagues, and you could easily see how, just like traditional sports and Major League Baseball took 100 years to get to Moneyball. Um, some of the esports industry, they were only going to have like 3 or 4 years to get to Moneyball. And so, how could we, help or enable that? And also, I went to school at MIT for both undergraduate and graduate work. Um, and for my undergrad and master's work, I was doing stuff with plasma physics and fusion. And we used a lot of computer vision techniques to look at the plasma to try to predict what was going to happen. And that's when I had my aha moment and called up my co-founder and said, "Hey, I have this crazy idea. What if we take these same computer vision techniques that I used to use for looking at fusion plasmas, but now we watch video of people's gameplay and try to predict what would happen and how they could get better?" And immediately he was like, "Oh, I got it. My son just went to UMass Amherst on a League of Legends scholarship, so I
And
can
this
see."
was Chuck, right?
Yes, this is
Yeah. So
Chuck.
I know Chuck from because Runkeeper started back in 2008, which was right around the Aperion
Yeah.
birthing time. So Chuck and I there was like 3 or 4 or 5 mobile app entrepreneurs running around Boston that were always on the same panels and stuff like that. And Chuck was one of them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. Anyway, so he's like, "Yeah, I'm in. I see where this could, be big." And so that's when we kind of started. We got into Techstars, built a prototype, worked with a couple of professional teams and some coaches to try to say, can this even be done? And then once we had that up and running, kind of going, yes, look, it actually does work. It can work. Then we began the process of moving this into something that, you know, any player can use instead of just, a consulting model where professional teams or top tier players could use it.
So what year were you saying can this work?
That's it. So that was in 2021.
Got it. And when you say can this work, what was the this at that time? Because there's a number of things that I would imagine have to work, and also there's the whole for whom proposition as well. So I guess what were the most important things for you to prove out in the earliest days before you even anchored that gave you the conviction to anchor?
Well, that's it. So if you remember back in 2021, that was before all these other AI tools had have existed or were even out there, or that there was an explosion with LLMs, stuff like that. So it was first, can we train a model to to watch video of this person's gameplay and then actually try to infer from that, you know, what are things that the person can improve on. And we figured, at the time there had to be some way to kind of do it because you were seeing, companies like DeepMind and AlphaGo and right being able to play, Go or chess or even StarCraft. And they were training these AIs to play the game themselves. So obviously there was a way that if a game could have some sort of, or if an AI could have some sort of understanding of the rules of the game, then there's got to be some way that it could also have an understanding of, oh, how's the user playing now, you know, how do we apply that and also keep it fun, right? We didn't want to, we make sure that our AI doesn't steer everyone towards the same exact kind of game, right? Uh, you saw that with AlphaGo, where many of the uh, humans that AlphaGo played against, they said, it made moves that a human wouldn't make, just things that we wouldn't think to try. And we didn't want to get into this, oh, well, it's going to make everybody play exactly the same. And then,
For whatever reason, the analogy comes to mind of how like Waze ruins certain neighborhood streets.
right.
Because all of a sudden it's like there's a cut through that never used to be a cut through, but Waze sends everybody there, and so the neighborhood goes from being a quiet street where kids can ride bikes and stuff to like being rush hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, let's face it, it's kind of like if everybody playing League of Legends always did the same build order every time, then well, where's the fun of the game of going, well, wait, it's 10 minutes and 18 seconds. I need to purchase this item. Oh, oh, I need to do this. There isn't any kind of skill involved anymore. So,
Okay. And so how did you go about training the model at that time? And similarly, if you were to start from scratch today, given that the LLMs do now exist, how would you do it different?
yeah, so there's several that's a really good question. I think there's several different points to it. Um, First is the way we went about it then was, simply to say, okay, the first steps are, that object detection and recognition. And let's see if we can, just get the basic objects that are on the screen, right? So that was kind of step one. And now that we have, step one in place and we know that we can recognize all the different heroes that are in the arena and where they're positioned and uh, what their uh, capabilities are and where they stand in terms of how much ammo they have or how charged is their ultimate ability. Now that we kind of have a state of the game, is there a way that we can start to infer from that state of the game what are better actions to take as an individual player or as a team of players? And so with that, we relied on talking to, several coaches and top tier players and saying, hey, in this situation, what would you do? And so we were able to start to train the AI to look for certain key situations and then essentially recommend, here's in that key situation, you as this type of player, this is your best bet to try to improve. And then we matched that with outcomes. So we were able to take a video of several different, hundreds of thousands of matches and see if they do
And when
this.
you say take, I mean, does that mean film or find?
That's it. In working with these teams, we were able to get a lot of their scrimmage video.
Hmm.
In addition to
Were
that,
they and they were recording that already?
yep,
So
there's
they
lots of
had these data sets that were just sitting there not being utilized?
that's it. They record them and then they do video review afterwards, right? And so same thing. That's a strength that our product wind up having is you can think of, here's a professional coach. They maybe do run scrimmages with their team of 5 players for say 4 hours a day, right? Now, from those 5 different players' point of view, the coach has 20 hours of video to go through that day just before the next day starts. And so rapidly you could see how like our tool became useful because if it could extract data or say here's a certain key moment to review, they could automatically reduce that coach's video review time, those kinds of things. Um, but we were able to take all that and then say, okay, did that increase their probability of winning or not? And then it became, simply looking at that and going, yes, if you do this action, your, chances for your team winning will improve. And so, mathematically, we're able to start, compounding a bunch of those different results and coming up with the best practices for that type of player or that type of game.
So when you were initially getting going, is there some type of magic number in terms of when you have enough data to launch and then switch to getting the data from real people using your product versus just from YouTube or data sets that exist elsewhere? Like what's the minimum where it's okay to flip the switch and actually get some sample size that is a reasonable starting point, if there is such a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we found is that what we like to do is train. It's this is a rough number because it does vary per game, and it does vary a little bit by the quality or the variation that we have in the video. But we have been able to find that initial seed we can do in about 1,000 hours of video, which is much lower than I thought it would be. I thought it would be much higher. Um, but that is enough to kind of get it started.
What happens
And
if it's below that, Shaun?
if it's below that, we start getting some really bizarre recommendations or right, what people in the industry right are calling is hallucinations. Um, I don't really like calling them hallucinations. I think they're just flat out errors, and we want to avoid those. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And so when you were getting this initially going, who did you think you were building for? Was it the coach? Was it the player? Was it a coach replacement? Was it to assist the coach? And also, how did you know and how much time did you spend with the potential stakeholders that you thought you were building for while you were building, before you were building? Like
Yeah.
what order did you kind
Well,
of
that's
tackle
it.
this chicken and egg? Yeah.
When we first started, we thought, our initial market would probably be, higher end teams,
Hmm.
right? But as you know, in that entrepreneurial journey, you quickly start to figure out some things, and as we started kind of working with those higher end teams, we learned that essentially that market size is much smaller than we'd like. Um, and so even though that became, where I would say we could get a lot of training information and a lot of value for it, um, our we wound up actually looking at this and going, no, our market is your everyday game, right? So an everyday gamer right now will spend $7 to $10 a month on trying to get better, either by buying game guides or augments for their game, or you know actually they even just buy cosmetics for the game. And and that's where we wound up saying, look, this is where it gets really interesting, and we can actually have a bigger effect, right? So I may, you know, I may as a player like playing, um, Destiny as or Destiny 2 as an example, but I want to actually play, you know, Call of Duty better, or I want to play Fortnite better, or I want to learn how to play Valorant, and that's where suddenly here's this tool that can help me get up to speed in an existing game where other people are far better than I am already. um, that became very appealing, I think, to many of our users. And it was spending time with those types of people saying, I still remember way back in early 2022, where we had just some regular people come in and play a few matches of Overwatch 2. And and having one of them come up to me and say, I'd never played this game before in my life, and th- this is probably completely obvious to everybody else, but I didn't even know about it. The Omnic Forge actually came up. One of the recommendations they got was, you're playing a support character that has healing capabilities, and your HUD was turned off so that you couldn't see the other players on your team and who needed healing. And he's like, it sounds completely stupid, but I'm glad it actually told me I need to turn that HUD on, because that actually made me a better player. I could start to see who needed healing and run around and try to provide that healing. And he's like, and I know that a top tier player probably doesn't need that kind of recommendation, but I really appreciate that this already told me something that I could do as a beginner.
So what is the workflow if I'm playing the game? Ha- wh- how do I engage with Omnic, and when do I engage with Omnic relative to when I'm actually playing the game?
Yep. So we have a couple of different ways that you can engage. Um, the first is you simply go to forge.omnic.ai and you sign up. You can get a free account. A free account will give you a certain level of analysis, and you'll be able to see your last 5 matches and a couple of insights per match.
And when you say see, is that how does my gameplay get populated?
Yep. And so what happens is when you sign up, you have a couple of different, options of how you want to sign up. You can just give a username and password, or you can connect your Twitch or your YouTube gaming account. And if you connect your Twitch or YouTube gaming account, what happens is you're giving the Omnic Forge permission to watch your stream, and that's all you need to do. And literally, as the Omnic Forge watches your stream, every time it recognizes that you played a match of Fortnite or a match of Overwatch 2 or a match of Valorant, um, after the match, it will send you a post-match report. You'll get an email that
Almost like
has,
how Granola does that for a Zoom call.
yep, yep, and that's it. So you'll get a post-match report, and you'll see like a little email come in with your player card that has a picture of you, some of your key stats, your hero or agent on it, and what map you played on, and then maybe you also might get something that's like a plays like that says, "Hey, congratulations! We recognized in your gameplay you were playing like Tens or like Booga or like Faker," and that can become a really big driver um, of kind of that oh wow moment. Like that's really cool. Um, then if you click on the link, it can take you to a web page where you can see all sorts of stats, your career stat, your percentage wins by map or by agent, your tool that we really, really like to tout is our aim analysis tool that no one else has, where it will show you your time to target and whether you targeted for critical hits or for body shots, so on and so forth, as well as those insights, right? So those quick little tips that say, for next match, focus on this, or try using this weapon instead of this one. You'll be better with it, based on your gameplay. And then as well, there's a place where you can get a summary of your match and actually then engage with the Forge by asking a question and saying, okay, where should I have placed my smokes more effectively, for instance, or, you know, uh, is there any synergies I can have, as I'm playing Farah, with some of the other agents or heroes.
Uh-huh. And this kind of guidance, uh, how much of that was human or human in the loop? Uh, and as you went and trained the AI to do it, was that sitting with a human who to instruct, or was it the AI running a bunch of tests in the background and kind of doing simulated gameplay? Or I guess kind of practically speaking, what is the best way to train a model, and how much should the human be involved as you scale, if at all?
Yeah. So, those are actually great questions and things we're still learning, right?
Hmm.
So we're still figuring out some of those things. So far, what we've been able to figure out is like you said, we sit down at the beginning and we use a human coach or sets of players, and we come up and we call it seeding, and we'll seed the AI with some various things for them to look at, and those can be as simple as don't engage on this point from the southern side. You want to come in from the northern side because of these reasons. Or they could be things like, look, if you have this player and this player and this agent on your team, this is the type of coordination you should be using in order to, take that site. Um, with those, we will literally probably have anywhere from 100 to 250 of those that we seed in. But from there, the AI does begin as we develop more matches. The AI does begin to pull in more things and recognize, oh, here's other things that I think are creating win condition. And so we will see those numbers of insights grow greatly over time. And that's the best thing that I tell people about with any AI tool, right? Is the worst performance you're going to have is what you see today. And it's only going to get better as it learns and gets more information from the community. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It gets better and better and better.
And when it comes to avoiding the misses or hallucinations or errors or whatever you want to call them, I mean, is there human oversight today to catch those before the analysis goes out the door, or
Um,
how does that process work?
yeah, there isn't. We do get those that do come out. However, what we're using is the community can help us. So for every insight that the Forge delivers, that you as a user, you can say, yeah, thumbs up or thumbs down. I want more of these. I want less of this. And and as you do that, you're actually giving feedback into our AI engine. So our AI engine, we can say, yeah, look, this kind of information that came through was a hallucination because we just received, I don't know, 50, downvotes in the last hour. So um, automatically the AI will start tuning away from that and not providing that information.
And less of an esports question, so it's more, I guess it's just kind of product management 101. But if you have these hardcore gamers that it's a smaller market that you're explicitly not focused on, the pros, and I would imagine that they're far more demanding with needs that don't necessarily align with this more casual market that you're focused on. And then you have the more casual market that has a different set of needs. So it's not just about the feedback, it's about the from who, right? And so
Mhm.
how do you think about what to listen to and what to ignore as it relates to who you're building for?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good question. So,
Well, I
once
learned
again,
with Runkeeper, right? Because
I
the
know.
needs of the ultra runner are very different than the needs of the couch to 5K person, right? So,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and the way that we're going about that, and we'll see, it's an experiment, but it seems to be working, is that just like uh, our the way that we built a coaching tool that can scale, right? Using human coaches doesn't scale, but this AI coach can scale to cover users. We're doing the same thing where we've got an AI that actually categorizes or classifies, or we call it thumbprinting. And so we're thumbprinting your play style and your game style as you're using the Forge, and then we're able to drop you into bucket. And and that way, when you provide the feedback, it's for that bucket of user. Um, we need to do a lot more improvement on that, but it seems to be, working, and we'll continue to refine and have different buckets and different categories of those users. And with that, we hope that, yeah, essentially it will provide this bucket of users more of a certain type of recommendation, and those high end users, they go, yeah, I don't want any of that. I want this kind of stuff, and the AI will provide that information to those higher end.
Got it. And One of the things you mentioned before we started recording that you listened to the episode I did with Swapnil from Swing Vision. He talked about how they started going like you did before these LLMs existed, and therefore they built their own models. And one of the he didn't use this word, but it sounded like accidental advantage of that was that they could do all the compute on mobile and not in the cloud, which meant it was a lot quicker and a better user experience. How are you doing things? Where does that compute take place? And in esports, does it matter?
Actually, it does matter. So as an example, we when we first started, we started thinking about this, and look, do we do the compute at the user's device? Because it's kind of interesting, right? Most of these gamers, at least on the PC side of things, have a big GPU sitting in their device. But that's it. We rapidly found out that gamers hated that because having that compute on their device meant that their game wasn't playing as smooth. So we actually do our compute basically in a mixed mode of in the cloud and actually in data center that we have.
So you've got the opposite, that actually it's a disadvantage. So what's an advantage for Swing Vision is a disadvantage for Omnic.
That is absolutely the case. Yep.
I'm so glad I asked, because that's going to be super telling for anyone listening that's trying to evaluate how they should do it, right? Is that, well, the answer is like so many things. It depends. Yeah.
Yep. However, like that is, one thing that is a strength for us is since we're only analyzing, video of your gameplay, it turns out we don't really care what you're playing on.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly we can analyze games from consoles like, PlayStation or Xbox or Switch. They just have to share video of their gameplay and we can help them get better. Likewise, mobile. That'll become bigger as we cover some other games here, but it doesn't matter that, you can just take your phone and record video and send it to us. And once again, we can analyze that. And it doesn't require a lot of retraining on our end. All we have to do is say, yeah, we have this video, take it. And our engine says, okay, sure, got it.
So one question I have is that it seems like AI is on this very rapid trajectory, and there's a lot of leverage that's being gained with every passing day and week and month as the innovation is happening under our feet. What's happening in the computer vision world? The sense I've gotten from other guests that have come on the show is that it's a more linear path where you're not going to get as much leverage, and maybe it's even harder to, maybe, I don't want to use the word commoditize, but it's just harder to differentiate from others who are doing similar. So I guess, what are you seeing as it relates to the stack that you're building with and how quickly it's evolving? And I guess, how do you keep up, but also how do you differentiate at the same time?
Yeah. The differentiation is an issue, right? So I wouldn't say that we've gotten that figured out yet. What we try to do is, market our product and explain to people, here's kind of the basics, right? Of, yeah, this is how it works. This is, what it's doing. It's, watching video of your gameplay. It does take a little bit of time to process, but if you stream to us directly, we can start processing as soon as you start playing. And that way, right at the end of your match, within 30 seconds or a minute, you can get a report. So those kinds of things. In addition to that, I think just like any other technology, it's just important to kind of know the lay of the land and keep flexible, right? So that's what we've done, where we've been playing around with some different tests for our insights engine, and I hope that we can release some soon that make modifications and start to build on some of these other workflows or these other tools, so that we can essentially take the data that we get from the computer vision side and move that over into somewhat of an LLM side, right? So that now you're able to you know, better interact or see that or ask questions about, you know, my progression in something maybe that we didn't even think of, right? So you know, you might be able to say, oh, well, look, right now I play a lot of duelist in Valorant, but I'd like to become more of an initiator. How do I do that? And have it be able to provide you that guidance and say, okay, this is how, you know, these are some techniques to adjust your skills in this area, and, you know, basically port them over into that different type of play style.
Have you or has anyone experimented with analyzing how the pros play and finding a way to either package and contrast their style with the learners, or even put them in touch as a way for them to make extra income, cameo style?
Yeah. So actually, uh, that is something that you know, a feature of the Forge that, like I said, we really like. We call it our plays like.
Hmm.
And what'll happen is as you're playing, um, for instance, it might recognize that you exhibited some elements of a play style that a particular high end player did, and it will say that, it will let you know that, hey, we noticed these elements of your play in this game. If you want to learn more, you know, go here. You can, you know, view their Twitch stream, or if they're uh, as an example, we just signed a partnership with M80, and we'll be working on like some rollouts of M80 with their academy. And so it might make recommendations to you of, you know, oh, well, look, you can go join, you know, the M80 Academy course with Sploit or something.
Hmm. Got it. How is Omnic AI funded? Uh, I guess how much have you raised and from what sources? And don't share anything you don't want to share. I have a follow-up question that's relevant, which is why I wanted to know that first.
No, that's very
Yeah.
fair. Yeah, so we came out of TechStars. Coming out of TechStars very quickly, we were able to raise about 730K
Hmm.
from various angels, including uh, Rich Miner, who people would recognize as um, the founder and CTO of Android. Um, and so that was a big endorsement for us that, okay, we have something, right? From there, we have done essentially uh, a pre-seed, and we've raised to date about 2.2 million. And right now we are
And
working
was that
on
from individuals as well, or were there funds involved?
individuals and some smaller VCs. Yep. Yep.
Uh-huh. And how are you thinking about capitalizing the company directionally?
Well, that's it. So then, directionally, what we're doing right now is we're really focused on growing our user base right now. Uh, uh, Essentially, looking at, you know, ways that we can, you know, generate additional revenue and increase our conversion rate to our paid plans,
Uh-huh.
so on and so forth. And we're doing that a lot through some different partnerships that we've been announcing, such as the M80 partnership that we just did, Play Versus, who works with something like 5,000 high schools across North America. We just did a partnership with Levels Gaming in Saudi Arabia and Great Britain eSports in the UK. And we've got a few more coming down the line. In fact, I think this week we start with combat tested gaming and the VFW for veterans the game. And they're running a big Rocket League tournament. And we're providing our software to for use during that tournament. And then with that, we plan on basically at the end of the year, kind of raising an A round to really scale and essentially up our sales and marketing activities, as well as uh, expand the tech team so that we can hit all those top game titles that I mentioned.
you hear these terms like AI native and seed strapping is another like buzzword of the day where like you raise a seed round and because these AI tools are enabling teams to build so much more efficiently, they can get to profitability and never look back. Um, uh, I guess what does the term AI native mean to you, and how do you think about yourselves in that regard? And also, I mean, it sounds like you'll need a bunch more capital to scale. How do you think about that seed strapping and what types of companies are a good fit versus not, and why this might be more capital intensive than some of those companies that at least the perception is that they're becoming more capital efficient. Whether that ends up being true or not, we'll see.
Yeah. Honestly, this is an interesting one to me because I think I think right in that journey, right? So when we first started the company, my thought was, okay, this will be more capital intensive, just because the size of the market is so large with 3.3 billion gamers out there in the world, 1.8 billion of which put themselves in a competitive or highly competitive category, right? That just seems like, okay, that market is large enough that the venture route is, what I would say is kind of the traditional, route to go, right? To be able to need. However, then we kind of went through a period where like you said, that seed strapping, seemed like, wait, this might just be fine. And we might be able to, essentially, grow the company with the revenue that we have coming in and not hit that. Um, Now the way I see it is this is where you get into that interesting uh, kind of inflection point of we're getting a lot of traction. However, we're also starting to see some other people that are starting to add AI tools. We know they can do it quickly. Um, we know
Some of
that,
the larger existing players, you mean?
yep,
Hmm.
yep, and we know that they can do it quickly. However, they'll have a lot of learning that they need to still go through, right? Like there are just things that inherently, as we developed our software, that we were like, oh, uh, that's kind of interesting. It works in this case. Suddenly, it doesn't work over here at all. And why didn't it? Right? So we know they'll hit those. However, um, this is where if you can stay ahead of the game or be, in that kind of first mover advantage or that bigger player advantage, that might be, uh, you know, of significant importance to the company staying at that forefront or ahead in all those gamer.
Uh,
So
so how big is big as it relates to these potential competitors, and also where do they sit in the market? What do they do?
well, that's it. So here's a great example. I think during Game Developers Conference, uh, Microsoft kind of pre-announced that they would have like an AI gaming,
Hmm.
right? Um, they, it turns out what they announced
So
isn't
that so when you
really,
say how big is big like that, that answers my question. That's pretty big.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it turns out
It's
that,
not like an A round company that might do an acquihire or something. It's like, no, this is Microsoft, which, yeah,
right.
yeah.
And that's
Good
it.
news and bad news. It's good news that they care about the category. And if they come in and try and fail, then they're going to be a lot more, desperate and price insensitive in terms of fixing their problem. But they may
Yeah,
kill you first, right? So
right.
that's the
And that's
dice
it.
roll.
And
Yeah.
it does show market validation, right? That, okay, wait, there's a market there. So there's that. And then also there's just, there's also uh, the standpoint of which this sounds small and petty or, small and, strange, but the fact is AI is bigger now or on, is around. So access to just things like graphics cards or the cloud compute platforms, right? Like when we need compute power, it's expensive. And and I didn't see that becoming more expensive over time. I thought it would fall in price, but at least now, it's rising in price
because of
I think
demand.
long term it will still fall, but right now it's rising.
Yeah, because of the demand that AI, the influx of AI is causing.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's it. Like I mentioned, we have several servers kind of on-prem and stuff like that. Getting GPUs for those servers, because the big people out there are basically buying all the inventory.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting problem.
Now, company at your stage, how do you guys think about engaging with these big potential competitors slash potential investors or partners or acquirers? Is it arm's length? Do they know who you are? Do you recommend approaching and spending time with them? Do you kind of keep them warm? I know what I would do. I know what my answer would be, but I'm curious what your answer is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of those. It's
Hmm.
it's kind of interesting, right? There's some that you go, okay, let's keep them at arm's length. There's some that you say, hey, let's start talking and engaging. You know, maybe there's I don't know. There's always that typical business strategy of, well, let's approach the number two player and see how that
Hmm.
goes, right? Because if there's people out there that have announced something that isn't really there yet, that that same thing. If you walk in and say, hey, we have something that you can start with today, then suddenly they get the first mover. So
Hmm. Now, we've talked about competition and differentiation being a challenge, but set that aside. If you just look at the overall market, as you think about market size, as you think about propensity to pay, as you think about churn, as you think about price sensitivity, I'm probably missing one or two things to think about. But just what's the hard part about it, or
I
what are the
think
hard parts?
what you mentioned, is exactly the hard part, especially for me coming from more
Which
of a
which part which part
technology
of that?
mindset is kind of all of that, like putting that all together and
Hmm.
going like, for instance, um, price sensitivity. We did a few tests with that and we didn't see a lot of price sensitivity. However, when we go out there and talk to our end users, they all mention price being an issue. So right, it's trying to figure out, okay, maybe then, right now we kind of have we have a free model or a freemium model with a paid upgrade for 9.99 a month, can analyze any of your games, but many users are only playing a game at a time. So maybe there's a way to say, look, if you pay, 4.99, you get one game. Do you know what I mean? And then each game you add is another $2 or $3. But you can still, uh, go ahead and just pay the 10.99 or 9.99 a month to get access to all the games that we cover,
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about some similar stuff in other categories. So think like, uh, my son's a hockey player, so one of the things I've been thinking about is that if there's a live barn has these video cameras in a bunch of rinks, you can get the footage. There are human coaches that'll go and review the shifts and charge you per game to analyze how your kid did and sit down with your kid and go through like, I like that decision there. Like one thing you also could have done is this thing, and like here's some things you did well. Here's some things you could do better next time, stuff like that, right? And so it's like, well, is there a way to train a model to do that? It seems like VC's mindset. Not that I would go raise venture anyways. I don't. I hope not to with whatever I build, but their mindset is that like, oh, for the reasons you mentioned, like, oh, like small market, hard, low propensity to pay, churn,
Yes.
price sensitive. It's like I don't know if that's venture, right? Like I mean, I get that you're already on the train to some degree, but what would you say to a VC that had that feedback for you, sitting where you are today with the last several years under your belt that you have?
Yeah. I think, you know, kind of the best approach or the best thing that we can kind of say is, look, um, those are all problems that have been solved with other businesses. Um, they're all tweaks to, your product offering. Those are all optimizations that need to come into play,
Hmm.
and there's ways to, basically, you know, measure them, do a test, measure, and then make a change, right? And um, building a company requires doing that many times, multiple times over. And, and, you know, I think I share your, thoughts of, you know, if we can build the company, without having to take that additional capital, I'd love to do that. Right. Like, revenue is the best way to kind of feed the company. Um, and it may be possible still, but if we do need to go for that capital, I think, all those arguments are essentially things that everybody encounters, and that's why, there's entrepreneurs to try to figure that stuff out and guide the company and make it successful.
And
So,
I mean, you happen to be passionate about gaming. I happen to be passionate about hockey and other things too. But I was talking about hockey specifically here. If you take out passion and you just, as a pure capitalist, at these markets and you think, okay, computer vision, AI for analysis and coaching, different sports or activities have different value props in terms of market size, in terms of propensity to pay, in terms of whether the cameras are on-prem or whether you have to get the footage another way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a sweet spot in your mind in terms of like a criteria for a category versus a specific category where the fruit's the ripest, where it's like, oh, if it meets these criteria, then it's well suited, and you can still get it done in some of these other ones, but it's just more of an uphill battle?
I do. I think what you have to do is you have to look for something that's evergreen for one, right? So, as you kind of mentioned, this is where it's interesting. Like, um, you have to look for something that's evergreen. You have to look for something where there's a significant number of participants. So, right, to use your hockey analogy, right? Obviously, there's room for some small amount of companies to do something like that for the NHL, right? But I think there is a much bigger opportunity if you can help all the youth hockey leagues around the world, right? And so this is where, uh, same thing. We found that focusing on the gamers, at every level and bringing them along is a much more attractive market, um, and one that deserves kind of that venture scale a lot more than those top tier teams. And then the third thing I'd say is looking for some sort of uh, community that's already leaning towards technology. Um, and that's one of the reasons why, like, we think we can be more successful in gaming because they're already used to using some sort of technology tools. Uh, there were gamers out there using aim labs to practice for their aiming and stuff, or warming up before they go into a match. And so they're already kind of comfortable with technology tools to help or assist. Um, if you were going, I think, uh, something like, hockey or basketball or baseball, something where they already measure things a lot, and they're already, they've already got some cameras, like you said, in the arenas and stuff like that. I think that's a better bet than trying to go after, maybe uh, rodeo or polo or something like that, where they're just not as far along.
Interesting. And if you were starting today and pursuing either this path or in one of these adjacent categories, how would you think about uh, DIY versus utilizing these LLMs, for example, or other kind of off-the-shelf tools? And also, how would you think about capital sources?
Yeah, I would actually, look at the tools that are available out there and try to stand on the shoulders of the giants that have already built things.
Hmm.
Um, the reason I say that is it also will prevent some technical debt in the future, I think. Um, as an example, when we first did our prototype, um, you know, the, everything we did was homegrown, essentially code, right? So a lot of C and and um, what happened is we started to notice that many of the chips that were being developed were coming out optimized for tensor calculation. So it made more sense to start to use tensor libraries and build upon that, because that's where we would start to see, costs start to, drop in the future as these chips were more and more optimized towards tensor operation.
It seems like it'd be really fascinating to lay out the different potential categories where this type of kind of CV, computer vision, AI, machine learning, like where that could be applied for coaching and analysis, and then like what are the criteria that would be more conducive to cloud? What would be the criteria that would be more conducive to on device? What are the criteria that would be more conducive to 100% AI? What are the categories that would be more conducive to human in the loop? Almost just like kind of laying it all out. Because another thing I've been thinking about is just how much economies of scale is there if you kind of stood up this infrastructure and expertise under the to go apply and to build a fit, across markets, across categories, but leveraging a lot of the same underneath. Is that an angle that you guys have thought about directionally as a way to maybe increase the market size, but also leverage a bunch of the infrastructure and expertise that you already have?
We have, and honestly, it's just something where we've put that down as, that might be future
Mm-hmm.
growth, and let's just focus on a niche that we can really serve right now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, to essentially, establish a foothold, and then be able to say, okay, now we have this layered AI approach. Let's see if we can, apply it towards some other, industries or other things. Because as you mentioned, right? So if you step way back at 100,000 foot level, or out in the ionosphere, you're essentially taking and trying to make software that can coach somebody in doing some sort of activity. And who knows? Maybe that's you know helping to train doctors perform surgery better.
Yeah, I mean, I almost wonder, is there like what Squarespace is for websites, making it so easy for people to build? Like for someone like me that wanted to go, let's say I wanted to go pursue this hockey thing, like it seems like you have a lot of infrastructure that I could already leverage. Like, could you package that and somehow, could I pay for it on a subscription basis or something and be able to build on top of it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And there's that that could be an alternative. Is Yeah.
Great. Well, what does the next 12 or 18 months look like for you from a priority standpoint, and where do you need help if anything?
You bet. Honestly, like I said, our true north metric we're using right now is users, and we just need to get word out that here's Omnic. It's a tool you can use. You know, you should be using it. Like, you know, if nothing else, sign up for a free account, because you know if you want to get better at gaming, which we know every gamer out there does, nobody plays a game so that they can be worse. And so we just need to build awareness so that people go, wow, oh, this tool exists, because that's what we've been finding talking to our current users is they're like, wow, I didn't know this existed. now that I do, it's actually great. Like, it's actually helping me, and I'm getting better. So
And
so
how do people find you today?
the way you can find us today is same thing. Watch our TikTok is a good avenue. Also, as I mentioned, some of our partnerships, right?
Hmm.
So we're starting to drive with the Veterans Group, through M80 and their academy, through Play Versus, um, and literally, sign up today at forge.omnic.ai.
Great. And Shaun, if Omnic AI is successful beyond your wildest dreams, what does it look like when it's in that form? Like let your imagination run wild from an ambition standpoint.
You bet.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I said, I really want to focus on, like, it's that whole thing that I think it's very frustrating if you're a gamer and you're playing a game and you get stuck. Like you're just like, I can't get past. You know, I'm here grinding away and I can't get past gold one. You know, just anything to be able to help any gamer or have them go, yeah, like I'm not the best gamer in the world. I'm not ever going to be pro, but this helped me get as good as I can be, and I enjoyed it. And I think that's the big thing is, uh, life's way too short. I think everybody should just enjoy, you know, what they have, and I want to see people, if they want to be better at Elden Ring, they go and they can use the Omnic tool, and it helps them progress faster. Or they're really busy at work, they only have 45 minutes a day to game or a week to game. Well, how can I use that most effectively and be able to enjoy that game? Because we have some truly amazing like game designers and artists out there that are making amazing like worlds and puzzles and you know uh, looter shooters and open worlds. And it just seems like we now have an art form that's kind of also in that technology realm. I want people just to be able to experience that and enjoy it.
Well, I think that's a great point to end on, unless there's anything I didn't ask that you wish I did.
Not that I can think of. This has been great. I really enjoyed the discussion.
I did too, and I learned a ton, which probably means that at least some segment of our users that are trying to figure out this world as well are going to say the same thing. So, Shaun,
Likewise,
thanks. Yeah,
I learned a ton too. So, I think that's, I don't know, that's what it's all about, right? So let's help each other out.
well, I appreciate it, Shaun. Thanks so much. Best of luck to you and Omnic AI, and we'll be rooting you on from the sidelines.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you for tuning in to The Next. If you enjoyed it, you can subscribe from your favorite podcast player. In addition to the podcast, which typically publishes weekly, there's also a weekly newsletter on Substack at thenextnext.substack.com. That's essentially for weekly accountability of the ground I'm covering, areas I'm tackling next, and where I could use some help as well. And it's a great area to foster discussion and dialogue around the topics that we cover on the show. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.